Hey there viewers, and welcome back. Today I want to take a look at this Coates 1500 wheel balancer. So it's a brand new machine to us. As you can see, we have not even filled the top tray up with all of the useful things that you would typically have in a tire shop, weights and cleaning supplies and things like that. So the big idea here is there's a couple of modes that we would like to take a look at. And mode one is going to be clip, which is something I would typically use on, let's say, a steel wheel or something that's covered with a hubcap, meaning I'm putting a clip weight on the outside and I'm putting a clip weight on the inside. Another variant of that is going to be clip tape. So a clip weight on the inside, a tape weight on the outside. So a wheel maybe that doesn't have a lip, or maybe you've done some custom paint, or maybe you're like me and you just don't want to see weights on your wheel. So I don't like seeing them, so we're going to also take that tape weight a step further, and we'll do tape on the inside, tape on the outside, and we'll hide the tape weights behind the spokes of the wheel. So when we're looking straight on at the wheel, we won't see any weights anywhere on it. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, I'm going to find a cone that fits. And this one fits quite well. If I flip it around the other way, you can see it's pretty, well, it's not the right size. So each cone is double-sided, and we're just going to pick the side that fits, then we'll decide on a mounting method. So there are two mounting methods that we can use. We're going to go ahead and install this spring, and we're going to put the cone on the back side of the wheel. So simply slide that cone on there in place, and then without dragging the wheel across these threads, the shaft obviously is replaceable, but that's beside the point. We don't want to mess up the threads. We will slide the center hole of the wheel onto this cone. So I've already assembled my wing nut, if you will. I've put the rubber protector on, and I'm just going to keep that on there for good measure here at this point. I'm going to go ahead and grab the wheel, use my knee to keep from dragging the threads, load it up onto the cone, grab the wing nut, and it's got a quick release thread. I'm not a huge fan of that really at this point in time. You can use that if that's your cup of tea. I am going to support the shaft of the motor just on the back side to keep things from turning around. So this is about how tight I go. I just rotate that wheel and just the momentum of the wheel to tighten that down. That should be sufficient to affix that onto the arbor. So now that the wheel is loaded onto the machine, I have to decide, do I want to do tapes or clips? And you can see here's the inside of the wheel right here, and here's the pretty side that the customer would see. So this is already selected as T1, so that's tape. Well, I don't want to do that because this is a cheap steel wheel, so we're going to put a cheap clip weight on that. So we're going to go C1, and we're going to do a clip on the outside because you would put a hubcap on this type of a wheel. So we're on C1 and C2 for clip weights. So let's go ahead and enter the dimensions of the wheel into the machine. You can see it asking for some positioning here at this point in time. So because we're doing clip, we're simply going to place this arm into the drop where that clip weight would go. And you can hear the machine acknowledging rather impatiently that it gets our measurement. The rest of the measurements will be done with the sonar system automatically. Both the rim width, or excuse me, both the tire width and the rim size will be measured automatically. So at this point, all we're going to do is lower the hood. See, we got a little wobble in our rim, and it gives us two numbers, here and here, and those are the weights that we need to put onto the wheel. So inboard is 0.5. It's actually starting with inboard. You can see the laser beam that kicks up from the tool tray. We also have a red mark on the, well, I think it's the inverter assembly. But should you be in doubt, you can hit next, and you notice my wheel has servoed around. My laser is shut off. There is no laser beam. So you kind of have to interpret where that red mark is to put weights at 12 o'clock on this side of the rim. But let's not worry about that at this point. We're simply going to hit the next servo back over. I'm going to take my 0.5, because that's what it said for the inboard, and line up the little hole in the weight, not smash our fingers, and pound that on. So our next weight was that 1.25 ounces. We'll hit that next button. It tells us the weight. I'm going to grab it from my weight tray. We'll move you over to the other side and we'll take a look at that installation. Now, one thing you'll notice is the motor pretty much keeps this centered up. So how I hold it there is I use my crotch. I kind of lean into the machine and I'm eyeballing 12 o'clock from the motor shaft up to the top, 12 o'clock, and that's where I'm going to put this clip weight. Once I've applied the weights, I'm going to do a check spin by simply closing the lid, and we'll see if we put everything in the correct spots. And we did. If we're 0 and 0, then we're good. Pretty much standard practice would apply if it's asking you to chase a weight. I never put more than one weight on a side in different spots. Sometimes I got to put two together because I ran out and need to essentially make a weight, but that's not what we're seeing here. Everything balances out. We did the dynamic balance. Everything's looking super good. We're done with this wheel. Just remove it from the machine. That was pretty easy. Make sure you got a good hold of your wing nut. Set that there. I used my knee so we don't drag the threads. And we're ready for the next tire. It's important to realize if we're putting another of the same wheel on this, we don't have to keep putting the measurements back in. We've already configured the machine. We just close the hood, obviously air pressure and all that good stuff, and we do the other 3 tires. Okay, so now we're going to do a wheel with tape. If you wanted to do clip and tape, that is an option. If you want to do tape and tape, that is an option. If you wanted to do tape here, that is also an option, but we're not going to get into that because we're just not going to get into that. I want to do tape in the inside of the wheel, and I want to do tape up by the spokes, because we have a wheel, while we can do a clip weight, let's say we custom painted it, whatever, we don't want to mar that paint up. So tape and tape. Let's go ahead and get set up. So we're doing a different wheel, same procedure as before. I can mount from the inside, why not? It looks like it's going to take the same cone, but the other side of that same cone. Same exact procedure as before. We've got the spring, we've got the cone. We're going to slide that wheel. Hopefully you see more than like just my shoulder. And get that onto the machine. And we're going to wing nut. I do want to show you an alternate method, since you've seen this method twice, where we put the cone on the front. If you would like to front mount, you're going to take everything off, completely empty. We're not going to need the spring. We're going to change out the cone on our wing nut for a plastic washer. Then, and I'm not going to go into the various reasons why you would want to do this, but let's just leave it at some wheels prefer this method over others. We'd then select a cone, again a different sized cone that actually fits this hole up here in the front, which I don't really have one that fits it really all that well. But for the purposes of demonstration, thread the wing nut on, lift, get her up on the cone, and that is the alternate mounting method. Not my preferred method for this particular type of wheel. Some wheels, that's the only mounting method that really truly works and gets them centered upright. You can look at the wheel, make sure it's not bouncing, anything weird like that, which is the case here. It is mounted correctly. All right, so here's where this gets just a little bit different, if you will. On the measurement arm, there is this laser, so we're going to turn that on, but I don't want to beam myself in the face, so we'll keep it facing in this general direction. And a couple of things are going to happen. So first, when we move this arm, there will be a blinking laser, and it is, hopefully you can kind of, I don't know, see that on my hand there. And what we're going to do is we're going to adjust that to the position where we want the inner weight. And sometimes that thing's blinking, sometimes I don't see it. But basically you just grab it by the knurling and you point it where you want to put the clip weight on the inside of the wheel. So after we've got that done, we're going to go ahead and we got to put the dimensions into the machine. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put this where we would put a clip weight. We're going to push the red button, and then another laser beam comes on and we're going to match that laser beam up with the blinking laser beam we saw earlier. All right, so what we basically did, because you can't fit this aluminum arm down or whatever inside of the rim, is they've put a laser on the end of it that references essentially where the end of this little plastic piece, would actually be. So that's why we're lining up the two laser beams. We got the offset from the machine done with the aluminum arm, and then we're telling it the depth of the rim, really, if you will, with lining up those two laser beams. So the blinking laser beam is actually the one that we're going to use for spoke input a little bit later, because I want to hide those tape weights behind the spokes of this wheel so I don't have to see it. So where we're currently sitting, we have put all of the dimensions into the machine. At this point, we are ready to close the hood, spin it, and have it tell me the weights. Oh, sweet. So in the interest of putting the weights in the correct spot, we can reference the position of things on this screen, or you noticed it asked for 0 weight on the inboard side. You notice when I hit that next button, a laser beam has turned on here. Well, it doesn't ask for any weight, so we don't need to put any weight on it. If I hit next, right here is where it's asking for a 1-ounce wad. So if I had a wheel, let's say that I didn't care if we saw the weights, or it didn't have spokes, or whatever, something like that, and I was comfortable putting a 1-ounce wad, we would put that 1-ounce chunk right in the inside of the wheel where the laser beam is pointing. It's not at the 12 o'clock, it's not at the 6 o'clock, because it's too hard to work on. It's really doing this at the 8 o'clock or the 4 o'clock position, however you're referencing the wheel, okay? So we put the wad of tape weights where the laser beam is pointing, but I want to take this one step further because it is conveniently right in the opening of a spoke. So really simple, we're going to tell this machine to hide the weights behind a spoke. So we're going to go ahead and press behind spoke. You noticed it changed my number ever so slightly. It says align laser with first spoke and press the spoke 1 button. So we're simply going to servo the wheel whichever direction you so happen to choose. Hopefully my big dome isn't blocking. So we'll put that laser beam right in the middle of a spoke. Middle is probably the best place to put it. We'll press that spoke 1 button. Now it asks for the second spoke. So we're going to rotate it in the normal rotationary direction, and then we're going to press spoke 2, and now it has acknowledged that we've done that. The way you know it's acknowledged is both of these lights are on. If you do it in any other way, it's going to tell you to read the manual, which to be quite frank is worthless, on how to put that in. And it takes a little bit to figure out the exact order that it wants you to put spoke 1 and spoke 2 in. So now if we take a look at the laser, you're going to have the option to press this next, and it looks like it's splitting that 1-ounce block, whatever, 1.25 ounces, into a 0.75 block and a 0.5 ounce block. So the next button is what's going to servo that over. Now it's going to do it 3 times because you have 2 groups of weights for this number, and well, there isn't any weight here, but it still flags it as being an option to put weights on. So that's the 3 times. So if I look over here, I'll have a solid laser and I'll be lined up. This is way out of whack. I'll do it again, okay, and we'll notice, hey, there's an option for over here, whatever. We'll do it again, and it's asking for another block. You can see where it's lined up on this side. So basically, if the laser pointer is a constant on, that is the quantity that it's asking for on that particular side or spot, if you will, of the wheel. This one, isn't centered up at all. So just be aware of that. Let's go ahead and partition off our weights and attach them to the wheel. So I've partitioned off 3 1/4 ounce weight. Hang on, we're struggling here. I have cleaned the wheel up with 3M, the regular, not the specialty adhesive remover. We're just going to go ahead and center that block of weights up with the laser beam. We're going to get it right smack in the middle. So the screen told us 0.75. The laser beam is constant. We'll go ahead and hit the next. You'll also notice that it's keeping us right in between the spokes, and it looks like it wants a 1/2 ounce. So we'll just partition off one of those, and that's probably going to go in the garbage, honestly, because it's going to get lost. And we'll set that guy real nice right there. I realize this wheel is bent a little bit, but that is how it goes. That's why we have it here in the shop. Then we'll simply close the hood, let it spin, and we have all zeros. Everything looks good. All right, so now that that has happened, we'll go ahead and remove it from the machine. And by it, I mean the wheel and the cone. And we're done. We're ready to do the other 3 of these, if I actually had 3 of them. Well, there you got it, folks. That is how you balance using clip weights and tape weights and 2 different mounting methods on your Coates 1500 balancer. So machine seems to do a pretty good job for everything that we would ever need it to do, everything I've really ever needed it to do. The only suggestion that I could maybe make is if this machine asks for what I'll call an obscene amount of weight on a wheel. Let's say it's asking for 3.5 ounces or something on one side of a wheel like that, and that the wheel was actually mounted on the machine correctly. What I would suggest is taking the wheel and tire off of the machine, back over to the tire changer, also a Coates in this case, and spinning the rubber tire, I'm going to just say, for starters, 180 degrees on the rim. So if you put a mark at 12 o'clock on the rim and you put a mark at 12 o'clock on the tire, you would bring that tire over to the 6 o'clock. Usually at that point, everything kind of solves itself out, and it's asking for an ounce. It's asking for a 1/2 ounce or 3/4 of an ounce or 1.5 ounces, something in what I'll call the sane, realm of weights that you would put on a passenger car tire. So the same thing I noticed on our old Hunter Road Force machine is it was essentially asking us to do the exact same thing, except it had a lot of computer sensors and road force measurements and such, which was really neat. But essentially in the end we were doing the same thing. So just keep that in mind, and this machine should serve you fairly well for years to come. Thanks for watching. See you next time.